Look, sir. Resistance trailer.
How you get so big getting food of this kind?
Alright, well, after months of waiting, we finally got the Resistance trailer, and it caught me a little bit by surprise. I'm a little bit out of uniform here. Though I am wearing Last Jedi pants for what that's worth. Let's talk this now that we finally got our first look at the show. Firstly, I'm going to watch the trailer with you guys. I have already seen it, but I'm going to kind of talk about the trailer as it's up, and then I'm going to give you some show thoughts after that. So the biggest thing that I noticed right away, and the biggest thing I've heard from other people, is how cool the ships look. The ship animation is absolutely amazing. It's very clear early on that this is going to be more about flying than we've seen in the past. Poe, of course, with Oscar Isaac. We already knew that was coming. We have the plucky young people and the gruff, not young person, so that's, pretty standard in Star Wars. I like seeing this kind of gruffer side of Poe. I like seeing this, like, oh yeah, we'll just check a guy over the side. It kind of connects him a little bit to Cassian, I think. Slapstick. Oh man, young people making cheesy smiles at each other. But yeah, so there's going to be a lot of racing, shooting. What's interesting is we have a lot of BB-8 throughout. But pretty much this entire trailer is flying, which I think is very interesting. So also, just to read off of StarWars.com really quick, it says, "We're thrilled to bring you intel on the first episode, the 1-hour premiere, The Recruit. In this, Poe and BB-8 assigned Kaz, who's the main character, to the Colossus, which was that big floating ship thing, where he meets a cast of colorful new aliens, droids, and creatures while undercover to spy on a growing threat of the First Order. Kaz works as a mechanic friend Yeager, a veteran pilot who operates a starship repair shop with his crew." It must necessarily take place after the novel Bloodline, because the novel Bloodline shows where the Resistance comes from, but it's probably going to take place right around there, which is around 6 years, maybe this will go up to 5 years before The Force Awakens. So in that time period, First Order was just getting formed, and it was actually getting formed out of the New Republic. If you haven't read Bloodline, I really, really recommend it. I have a feeling that it probably won't be necessary to watch the show, but it'll definitely help. But it seems to be like we're going to be in that context. So I like this idea that he's kind of a spy, and I'm really wondering how long is that going to last. Because I could easily see this being a thing in the pilot, and then all of his friends figure out he's a spy by the end of the first episode, and, then they go on their adventures. But I would actually really like to see a thing where they don't find out he's a spy until the end of the first season, enough to have formed a legitimate friendship with these new characters so that they can be really mad at him when he finds out that he's basically a Resistance loyalty officer, which is the type of thing the Empire has. The other thing right off the bat is obvious, and I said this a lot when we were watching the trailer, it's a lot about pilots. What's also interesting is what it's not a lot about, and it does not appear to be a lot about Force users. Now, this is not intrinsically a problem for most people. Oh, I just realized I still have these in my ears. Hold on. There we go. A little bit more range of motion. Sorry. So that's not necessarily a problem for most people. And I think it's kind of interesting too, because we had the Clone Wars. Obviously, the Clone Wars was going to be a lot about Jedi. It was going to be a lot about Sith, and everyone kind of knew that going in. And then we get to Rebels, and for a little while, it looked like Rebels was going to be not so much about the Force, and then it ended up being a ton about the Force. This, unless one of these pilots ends up being like Corran Horn or something, it looks like we're going to have a very Forceless show, and that's interesting to me. Just not only because it's different, but it also kind of makes me wonder where the show's going to go, and if the show is going to kind of have that second layered depth that the past Lucasfilm animation shows have had. And I'm going to get to that in a minute. Really, just generically, I kind of like what this is. It seems like very classic kind of, tween age TV show. I was originally concerned about the animation style. I am not a fan of Eastern animation. I'm really not. I can respect it for what it is. It's obviously a very difficult art form. It's obviously an art form people put a lot of time into. Just aesthetically, I don't enjoy looking at it as much as I like looking at Western animation. But I've been very happy with the Clone Wars and Rebels animation style. So it's just not my turn. Which is fine, and I'm certainly not bothered by the animation enough to not watch the show. I like the animation more than I thought I was going to. As for the show, I'm going to try to explain this in a way that doesn't make it sound like I'm ragging on the show. And the best way I can explain it is I am really excited for season 2 of Resistance. So what I mean by that is, if you go back to the Clone Wars and you go back to Rebels, it's generally agreed upon that the first seasons are the worst seasons. Now, if you like the show, saying the worst season is kind of like saying the worst kind of donut. At the end of the day, it's still a donut. But for me, I enjoyed the Clone Wars right away. But I went into the Clone Wars thinking it was going to be a kiddie show, that it was going to be very juvenile, that there was going to be no mature elements to it whatsoever. And then when I watched it and there were actually some elements of older material in it, you know, even going back to the Clone Wars movie, just the notion of having Truman Capote as a Hutt, or the flirting between Obi-Wan and Ventress. Like, the fact that there was anything like that at all really endeared me to the show when I thought it was always just going to be for 5-year-olds. And because of that, I could like the Clone Wars right away, and I kind of got through the rough first season or two. With Rebels, knowing what Clone Wars was already capable of, it actually took me a little while to get into Rebels. I love Rebels now. It's one of my favorite TV shows. I adored it. And I always liked the first season, but it was like, alright, I have to go through this kiddie first season again, and that's kind of what I'm feeling about with Resistance. I have every belief that I'm going to love this show, but I am not expecting to be in love with the first season. I'm expecting that we're going to kind of have the par for the course Lucasfilm animation, where the first season is just made for the current crop of 4th graders. Now, there's absolutely nothing wrong with the show being made for the current crop of 4th graders. I think it's a highly intelligent business decision. I think it's a highly intelligent artistic decision to build a foundation with the audience that's going to grow with you. I'm in no way slamming the show for that. I'm just not a 4th grader. So inevitably it's not going to be made for me, but that's okay. The show doesn't need to be made for me, and I'm still going to watch it. And I'm going to watch it because I have faith that the second season is going to have stuff in it that's there for me. If there's anything about Resistance I'm dreading, it's how the fan base is going to react. And I don't just mean about the kiddie stuff. I mean, when the first episode comes out and it's not about where Snoke is from, or it's not about when Kylo Ren attacked the Jedi Temple, people are going to be disappointed. And this kind of goes back to what I was thinking about, how it's interesting that it's not about Force users. I don't think it's going to be, at least not until the later seasons, because I don't think Lucasfilm wants us to know these big answers yet. And so I think a lot of people are going to be looking to Resistance as a place that's going to bring us big answers, and it's just not going to. At least not early in the show, maybe later. Understand, it's premiering in a little over a month. We're over a year away from episode 9. I don't think season 2 is even going to tell us much. Now, maybe there'll be some stuff early in season 2, which will presumably come out next October, that will start to lead into episode 9, but I don't think we're going to see anything that people are quote-unquote looking for until the second half of the second season, because by then episode 9 will be out. And I don't think they're going to tell us a lot about these things that people seem to want to know about until that happens. So what I'm really not looking forward to is people being mad that this show is just for kids and it's not telling us anything, because so that's kind of where I'm at. I'm already starting to see it just on people's internet feeds today, and I try not to get too into it, but I feel like people are already kind of drawing their line in the sand. Like, they're already like, if you don't love this show, even though it's a kid's show, then you're just one of those toxic people. Or you have people who are like, it's for children on the Disney Channel. And you like fall in one of those two categories. I just don't fall in either extreme, and I'm probably just gonna frankly ignore both extremes. I'm not gonna go through a huge breakdown on this. I gotta be honest, the pilots are not my expertise. Pilots aren't even necessarily the thing I'm the most interested in. There's plenty of other channels that have some really, really fantastic breakdowns that you should just check out instead. But I just kind of wanted to talk about what I'm looking forward to in the show. And just generally, I would say that I'm optimistic that I'm going to like it eventually, is pretty much where I'm at. And that I really want to make sure I do this in video, because I feel like if I tweet that or something, the tone will be lost. When I say that, I'm not trying to rain on the show already. It's just, I've been here, I've done that, I've bought the t-shirts. Like, I know how this is gonna go. Especially considering this show is not gonna have Dave Filoni as involved as we've seen in the past, because Dave Filoni is going back to the Clone Wars saved episodes, at least for this first season. And again, it kind of comes down to, really looking forward to the second season of Resistance. But then I kind of want to know what you guys thought. Is there anything cool you've seen in the trailer that you want to talk about? What are your general thoughts? I'm perfectly happy to talk to you if you're excited or not excited about the show. I'm sure we're going to discuss this more at a later date. Make sure you're following us on Twitter at Port Haven Forums and visit port-haven.com for even more. And until next time, keep it real and fly casual.
Cooking candies on